You can't go wrong here. If you love wrestling, if you have grown up with wrestling and your time served and you've put the hours in with wrestling, or if you are fairly new to wrestling but you've heard about some of the stories and some of the territories and some of the shenanigan of wrestling and you think, I wonder what that's like, you cannot go wrong with this documentary. It's called, for instance, Jim Crockett Promotions, The Good Old Days. Yes, and it's on High Spots TV. I used to be a High Spots TV subscriber. I'm not recommending High Spots, of course, but there are some great documentaries on there, including this one, and I might have to take out a subscription again. Frolics. Even more wrestling for me to watch. How am I going to have the time to do that? I could not sleep. That would help. Anyway, this was brought to my attention by the harbinger of Holy Christ himself, Michael Elliott. And it's his documentary, folks. It's just great. And what it is a simple, you could call it a simple, retelling of the history of this territory, Mid-Atlantic. And I was watching Mid-Atlantic recently. You know, I like to delve into the wrestling promotions. I was watching Mid-Atlantic from 84, should I say. And then I stopped and I wonder why. I need to restart because they had the talent base. And this documentary, it's about 2 hours, slightly more than 2 hours, will give you all of that info from the late 70s to its untimely demise, and it will also give you the reasons why. Now, one of the things about this, if you're not going to have an authorial voice, and we don't have that here, story tells itself, it's a tasty story. So it tells itself. Nobody gets involved in that, and then this happened, folks. You will get some bits of music in there, just to heighten things, sad music and all of that. And you will get some writing on the screen to tell you things that happened. But what you're not going to get is, I'm a stentorian voice, reminding you of what happened. You're not going to get that. Sounds a bit like Gordon Soley then, doesn't it? Yeah. So anyway, one of the great things about this documentary is that there are a load of fantastic talking heads in it. Now, when I say talking heads, I'm not being derogatory to anyone. That's what they're called. People who go on documentaries and there's lots of shoot interviews and that kind of thing. And whether Mr. E has interviewed these people himself, or his production team, or people involved in it, or whether that's there's information that's been agreed from other places, you get the people that you need on this documentary, and that is one of the most extraordinary things. So when they're talking about in 77, should I say, Paul Jones versus Ollie Anderson, those big matches they had together, you get to speak to them both. They speak both of them speak. When Ric Flair came in, yes, Ric Flair will be there as well to chat about this. And they talk about the young talent coming in. You'll get all those people. You get Magnum TA in there. You'll get Ivan Koloff in there. You'll get Tully Blanchard in there. I'll tell you what, you'll get Dusty Rhodes in there. Dusty! And you'll get, not a very good impression, but all mine own. And more as we go along. But the story is so tasty, as I say, that you get little snippets. And I'm not going to give you all of the information here. If you know about Mid-South and you know about that territory, then you will get more information here and you'll love it because it'll take you back, and you'll also get more information, snippets of information, like Rick Steamboat coming into the promotion, the territory, and Flair being absolutely bowled over by him and trying to sell Steamboat as the coming man to management, and just not being able to do it. Simply not being able to do it. So you get little snippets like that, and more as we go along in a minute. I'm not going to stay here for too long. I want to go and watch it again. But you'll also get all of the, I'll say it again, shenanigans that happened here. You know, a territory that thought and was big and was trying to, and thought they were, compete with Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the WWF as it was then, WWE now, but not really competing with them in a razzmatazz type way. And I always remember reading the wrestling magazines growing up. I got Sky TV, cable TV in this country as soon as I could. But when I didn't have it, growing up and hearing stories and thinking, Diesel's the world champion, for instance, it was all, or Sting beat Ric Flair. It was always, well, the Mid-Atlantic and WCW down the line were always the wrestling offer, and the WWF was always the razzmatazz offer, and that is fair enough. So some of the things you'll learn here, I mean, you know, to have Ollie Anderson on there interviewed is great. Just great, because he adds the gravitas, and he was there. They talk about Slaughter being brought in, getting the heels in there. Don Knodel, it says he never had a better time. And he fought Slaughter and Steamboat, and Youngblood. Slaughter, Knodel, Youngblood, Steamboat fought together. It was so successful. They were turning people away. Apparently, they had 20,000 in the arena. They turned away 20,000. The cops were having to say from their cop cars, don't come in here, because if you do, because there's no time. There's no room and no time to get tickets, and no room in there anyway. Go home. And it made them think about Starrcade. And they did that in 83. And you know, you could say that's something that Vince McMahon saw and thought, hello, I don't know, but you could. And they take you through Dusty coming in as a booker, and business went down a bit because he's trying to arrange it for himself and all of that. What I mean is he's trying to do his own thing. It's bound to happen. It talks about Black Saturday, when people in Georgia Championship Wrestling took over when they wanted to watch that particular very popular program, and WWF had taken over, and they saw WWF programming. That's done in type, so you can see it's really important. James E. Cornette is here. Jimmy's on there, reminding us that Crockett got a Sunday afternoon slot and eventually did better. And they paid Vince £1 million for that time slot back. There are some thoughts that was the thing that was able to bankroll WrestleMania 1. Everything is linked, isn't it? Everything ripples. Everything is linked. But Mid-Atlantic, it cannot be denied, was a money territory. Great for this period of time with Dusty as booker. Great talent centre. $1 million months they had. It wasn't unusual. Flair said they're the biggest years of his career, and it wasn't unusual for wrestlers to make $150,000 a week. As they said, the cars in the parking lot were a lot bigger than the cars that WWF talent had. We talk about the Four Horsemen, of course. Arn using it in an interview, and Tony Schiavone saying, "You've got something there." Great. But, don't forget, also saying, okay, the Four Horsemen, yeah, really important. Do not forget who else was there. Jimmy Valiant, who's there being interviewed. LOD, Magnum TA. We will talk about Magnum TA being the one who was going to be the man. They were talking about, as they were in the WWF, well, films, TV, we can do all of that. And then, of course, the car wreck, and extraordinary that he actually walked again. But Tully Blanchard does say when he and Arn went to the WWF as the Brainbusters, fantastic tag team, not there for long enough in my view, the Crockett business fell by half. I don't know if that's the case. it's a big statement to make. We also have, talking of accidents, we have early on, very early on, at the beginning really of this documentary, information about the infamous plane crash and Ric Flair and all of that. But Magnum TA does say that while he was in the hospital, Ric Flair came to see him and just left the belt with him, the NWA belt, and said, I want you to come and take this from me. And they asked Dusty what he was going to do, and he turned Nikita Koloff face, who was instantly over, but not really the guy that TA was going to be, or that was already. And about halfway through this documentary, after all of the celebration and all of that, we get, well, it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work is because they got too big too quickly. They had a Gulfstream and a Learjet, 2 pilots for each on the payroll. And Dusty apparently used to fly from somewhere that he could actually just have driven. So you've got them buying Bill Watts UWF, which was Mid-South in the past, putting the title on Ronnie Garvin. Ronnie has interviewed Flair saying Ronnie didn't really, and coming out, people didn't think of him as the kind of big money guy, and coming out of Charlotte and going to Chicago for the Chi-Town Rumble in '87 for Starrcade was really rubbing the people's noses in it. And they said they did a good gate in Chicago, but there were more people in Charlotte, which was the home of Mid-Atlantic, watching, and the Crockett territory, watching it on closed circuit TV. Extraordinary. They then went to New York in Vince's backyard, the WWF, and tried there in New Jersey. And Ronnie, of course, says that he didn't have a chance really as champion because he went months without a title defence. There are little snippets like this that make you think, I need to go and have a look at that. Is that right? Really well done. Beautifully cut together. Really flows beautifully. Now, you could say, well, this is just a history, isn't it? But you've got to tell it correctly. You've got to tell it correctly. And, there's a comment, an aphorism, I suppose. Aphorism, yes. History is written by the winners. That's not the case here. History is told by the winners and the losers, but the wrestlers are kind of one remove, because even Dusty Rhodes, who was the booker all that time, was really into it, close into it, are sort of standing away from it and saying, well, it didn't work, They're not saying it didn't work because of us. The Crockett's are saying it didn't work because of us. There's quite a mea culpa there in particular. They offered contracts with big salaries because they wanted to compete and keep the talent, compete with the WWF. They got hammered by Survivor Series in '87. There is the story of Vince starting the Survivor Series on that same night and going to pay-per-view carriers and saying, you will never get work with me again. This is the allegation. If you don't take my show instead of their show. And then let's talk about, well, it grew too quickly and it was still a sort of mom and pop, it's what they call it, promotion. And they had an accountant. Some people say he's one of the reasons why this didn't work. It's because they were so far in the hole. Apparently, he was asked by the Crockett's, have we got the money to buy this territory or buy something? And not only did they not have the money, they finally found out there were £2 million in the hole. He worked all weekend to find them the money and couldn't find it. In fact, a lot worse than that. There are some here who say he held up constant red flags and no one was listening. There are others who say it's his fault. And also, people talking about Dusty being on top for far too long. You'll know this promotion was sold. You might not, but probably you do. It was sold to Ted Turner. Sold to Ted Turner in 1988. And it's a great piece of work, this. It goes from that plane crash and Ric Flair talking about Tim Woods, who was injured and was back a week later. Blackjack Mulligan coming in to fill those gaps. Coming in from the WWF at the time, left a really lucrative role to do that. And George Scott being such a fantastic booker. It's a great piece of work, this. it gives you a beautifully told story. It's very easy to watch and makes me want to go and watch Mid-Atlantic, and that is the basis of great storytelling. You want to go back to the source material. You want to watch it again. I want to watch Starcades again. I want to watch the Chi-Town Rumble again. I want to watch it. Why? Because it was great. And so is this brilliant documentary. Holy Christ, it's good. Ta-ta.